Hey everyone, I'm Clue. So hopefully a nice simple one today, just trying to round out our discussion on the Living Legend system. Now first off, my apologies for being slack and unresponsive to the comments on the previous discussion videos, right? But I've had some time to sit with those comments, sit with the feedback information, reread it, and try to rationalize my thoughts a little bit better to hopefully have a bit more of a concise topic for the video today, right? And that's going to be variability versus consistency. So of all the benefits of the Living Legend system, all the potential upside to it, the biggest thing that I find issue with is the number of inconsistencies that it creates within the community and for LSS in terms of designing the game and again, fulfilling the voids left by the Living Legend system, right? It begs this question of, is the Living Legend system shaping design, or is design shaping the Living Legend system, right? We have Elemental in Limbo, we have Draconic quite close, and how long is it going to take for LSS to resupply these niches? Are they even going to, right? Aria's been a sore spot for a while, and while it would be sad for them not to touch it, I could, in all honesty, see them just trying to create a more grounded and concise field of play in heroes that they can work with a lot more easily. Because again, everything they do from this point onwards in terms of tweaking the Living Legend system is not so much about correcting it, but trying to create consistency in the inconsistencies of the system. I find that so weird, so awkward, right? A lot of you have pointed out to me that the main reason for upping the skirmish points was to reshape the meta of Blitz. And again, why jump through those hoops? Why not just skip the middleman and say Kano is going to leave play, Kasai is going to leave play, Chain is going to leave play? These heroes have dominated the meta, they've had a great lifespan, but it's time to see them leave. So after the season, in the middle of the season, at the start of the season, they're going to rotate out to Living Legend, and we get that fresh new meta, rather than, again, jumping through these hurdles and trying to create consistency with something that is inherently volatile. Now, what I think it's probably best to consider is, what purpose is the Living Legend system meant to serve, right? And could that still be accomplished through a more consistent system? So Living Legend is meant to be self-governing, self-balancing to some extent, right? If a hero is too powerful, then thanks to the Living Legend system, they will rotate out quicker than a hero, or I should say a field of play that is a bit more level, in which case all the heroes will accumulate slowly, and again, that will give LSS time to implement different heroes. But the question that spawns from this is, well, say we get to the point where LSS have perfected hero design, and every hero they release slots perfectly into the meta. It's not too powerful, it's not too weak, and it's just a new viable option for people to play with. Well, then what would the point of the Living Legend system be? Again, if that field of play becomes too level, then all the heroes are going to have a very similar lifespan, a lifespan that has already been objectively set by LSS. So why, again, jump through all these hoops to try and create something consistent from a system that is inherently inconsistent, a system that is open to manipulation from both the community and LSS in themselves? Again, the whole tweak to the skirmish points, the whole objective behind those tweaks is a form of manipulation, right? LSS had an objective to increasing the points. They had a goal in mind. It's not like we have this huge field of heroes and they just want to speed up the progress of every single hero. It was very clear that their intention was to reshape the meta so that, again, it bred new life into it. So why not just skip all that and go with a concise system? A concise system that would then enable them to rationalize design, right? They'd be able to exactly know when they have to come up with X hero to replace the older hero, right? They'd be able to tackle that other main point of the Living Legend system to create viability in all cards and, a long life of utility, right? They'd be able to go, well, it's been X years since this hero was introduced, so next set has to feature their replacement. They could rationalize all that. They could have a great sense of consistency for their design, for their development of the game. But instead, we get the Living Legend system, where every now and then you will have, the odd hero that just comes out of nowhere, right? A few cards that tweak it and make it great, or, its popularity shoots up, and then all of a sudden that hits LL. And in terms of set design, LSS have a roadmap that they know, and that set is 2 years away, right? And it's just this empty void that we just don't know as a community when it's going to be addressed. In terms of card pricing, that's going to really mess things up, right? All the elemental cards, although they're still legal, they're going to diminish in value until there's a clear sign that we are going to revisit Aria, that we are going to get heroes that can use all of these cards currently in limbo. Now, here is the important part to me to read, right? Immediate transfer of those cards to existing heroes of the same class or future application of those cards when a new hero is released that picks up the class / mantle of an ascended hero, right? So again, this is a big inconsistency. In terms of immediate transfer, sure, if the field of play, if the number of heroes in the works was there, right, then that'd be fine. In heavy hitters, we get 2 of each class, most likely, right? So 2 more warriors, 2 more brutes, 2 more guardians. It's still going to take ages for that level of treatment to hit every single hero. This whole clause of immediate transfer is going to take ages to actually come into existence. And then in terms of, future application, we don't have any concise information. Again, we have no idea if the Living Legend system is shaping what they design. If they have, 10 sets in the works, and then they realize, well, these heroes have LL'd, so this is the set that we need to push to the forefront of our development, right? We have no consensus to that. And again, it just screams to me, regardless of all the upside, I think you could create a rotational system that still accomplishes all the goals of the Living Legend system, but at its core has consistency that they can then work around, that we as a community can then rationalize and think about, right? We know this hero is going to leave meta, so we know that the next set is going to feature this hero. We don't have to fear about the cards being stuck in limbo. We don't have to worry about, pivoting to X new hero. We can just be patient, wait, have a backup hero. We can actually just have proper, tangible, consistent information and rationale towards what we're playing and what we're going to be playing in the future. Again, Draconic rotates out. We have no idea when the next Draconic set is. We have no idea when the next Aria set is. Yes, it could be this year, it could be next year, or it could be never, right? There are so many inconsistencies brought about the Living Legend system, and it seems like every single tweak we get is an attempt to create consistency with it, and that's just never going to happen, right? Why go through all this trouble? Why not then just rationalize and go, each hero will have X lifespan, all cards will always be usable because cards will never rotate out, only heroes, and within 1 to 2 sets of X hero rotating out, you will have the replacement hero. Now, the big thing to accept is a rotational system doesn't have to be the rotational system used by other TCGs, right? It can be a rotational system that accomplishes all the goals of the Living Legend system, just without all of its inconsistencies. At its core, the Living Legend system is a tool of balancing, right? It is there to prevent a outlandish hero coming into the meta and dominating, right? That would plague it for the amount of period or time that a rotational system would take to alleviate that problem. It is a way for them not to have to impose bans and to preserve the majority of cards. And it is a way for them to bypass a great deal of playtesting. Although it does feel like they have come up with a lot more concise and even spread heroes, right? If you think about any of the heroes that have been released recently, they don't exceedingly dominate, right? They might become fan favorites, but it doesn't feel like they are just at the top of the field of play, right? They don't feel like Bravo. They don't feel like Old Prism. They feel strong. They don't feel overpowered. And it's very clear that, again, the level of balancing that LSS has come up with is a lot better than it was in, the first few sets. But at the same time, once we get to that point where all heroes are balanced, are more equal, then the Living Legend system is not needed. There is no point in it becoming this self-balancing system that governs whether or not a hero is exceedingly powerful, right? If a hero slips through the cracks. Because again, if the field of play becomes even, then all it does is create unpredictability in which heroes rotate out and which heroes need replacements. Now, in saying all that, in all honesty, I can go either way. I can see the upsides to the Living Legend system. I can see the benefits to it. But I can also see the number of problems that it creates and it will continue to create, right? This is a new concept. This is a new system for Flesh and Blood, for TCGs. And therefore, it is an entirely new problem for LSS to solve. Every time they tweak it, every time they fix it, every time they manipulate it, they might solve one problem, but creates 1, 2, 3 more. And altogether, it just, again, begs that question of variability versus consistency. Would a consistent system just not be better, right? Better for the community, better for new players, better for them and their design of the game. At what point does it change from refining and tweaking the system to just being clear manipulation? Will we ever get to a point where the Living Legend system is consistent? I mean, the ratio of points to me will always fluctuate because you will have the variables of how many people are playing and how many heroes are available, all of which will impact the rate at which they need to LL and they need to transition out. So again, why not cut those variables out and just implement a consistent time frame that they as a company, that we as a community can understand, can accept, and plan around. Overall, that seems to be the main response that I'm getting, right? And that is just the volume of inconsistencies. For every benefit to the Living Legend system, there is a plethora of inconsistencies it creates. And again, I don't know if you could one for one, but again, if they're moving towards certain ideals, certain time frames for heroes to rotate out and heroes to be created and rotate in, why not just completely cut out all of the chance, all of the variables, and just make it consistent? You can keep the majority of benefits to the Living Legend system and easily squash out a ton of its problems just by changing it to something a bit more consistent. Even if at the forefront it's half-half, right? You still have the point system that can push heroes out of meta, out of playability early. But at the end of the day, you have a time frame, right? Had Kano been, on a 3-year clock, then there wouldn't have been any need to target him like this. But at the same time, once we get 15 new heroes, 30 new heroes, 40 new heroes, once the field of play expands exponentially, the Living Legend system is going to morph radically. So in all honesty, it's really hard to say. We can think up a solution for today's problem, but we won't know what tomorrow's problem is till it happens. And I do think that LSS are doing a great job working with that scenario. Yes, it might be a scenario that they created, but they are definitely doing their best to handle it. And it just falls back to me, the whole idea that the game, the growth, everything has exceeded what they as a company are currently capable of managing. So they need these self-governing systems. They need these ways to alleviate their workload. At the end of the day, to me, this is not the Living Legend system that we will see in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years. So I think as long as it accomplishes those main goals, right, preserving the utility of cards, then, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter to me what this becomes, whether it becomes something fixed or even something incredibly more variable. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. See ya.